So yesterday, I spent probably 10, 11 hours filming and editing and uh, editing again the typical sales cycle module, which is the first module in this course. And I think it went really well. I hope that you understand kind of a general overview of all of the steps in it. Once again, I apologize if me working backwards, because I am very, like I said, I reverse engineer shit. So today I'm going to talk about a recruiting cycle. I'm going to talk about what recruitment companies call 360 models, and hopefully ground a lot of what I said yesterday for those of you who work in departments that you're not familiar with some of the language that I used, be it KPI, be it OKR, be it these crazy other things that companies use as a synonym for OKRs, and so on and so forth. So this is an interesting model, right? It's got 6 steps in it right here, 6 steps. Like I said yesterday, I like 8 steps, because typically whatever, and there's so many different diagrams that are on the internet. You could literally just go to Google and hit search images and see thousands of them. Typically the ones with 8 to 9, 5, 6, 7, and 8 bleed into quote-unquote other departments' responsibilities, right? So personally, I think that if you as a recruiter or you as a recruiting team are not communicating with other departments and sharing some of the responsibilities in terms of delivery, in terms of just follow-up in general, it's going to be a disaster. But you'd be shocked, you'd literally, this will shock you, the amount of recruiting teams that just go straight up, that's not my job, and just leave the onboarding and just leave all of this really important stuff to the other departments, and they don't follow up with them, and they don't follow up with the people they bring on, and they don't follow up with anything. That's cause for concern, extreme concern. And so I just want to warn you, preface it before I get into these 6 here, that that happens. And we're going to touch more on the pitfalls of both sales and recruiting cycles. But basically they boil down to it's not a cycle, and you product people will understand this. It's a roadmap, essentially. And especially in the sales space, people like Jordan Belfort, they succeed at what they do in the sales space because he uses what he calls a straight line, which is not a cycle, right? He's familiar with cycles, don't get me wrong. He's familiar with the sales cycle. He's familiar with this shit. But he has an objective, and once he hits that objective, right? Once he hits that target, right? He's done. In his mind, he's finished. It's finished. And a lot of salespeople have that mentality, where they're really working with quote unquote road maps with an objective in mind. Kind of what I touched on in module 1. But they just they keep calling it a cycle, bro, and it's not a cycle. It's a roadmap. It's what Jordan calls straight line. Now, if your cycle is incorporating steps at the end where you're working with customer success, that's going to do the brunt of the fulfillment work and basically ensuring that customers taken care of, onboarded, the product services fulfilled. We're talking with them to get a better idea of what is good, what is bad, what can be improved, this, that, and the other, and all that shit. If your cycle incorporates stuff like that at the end, then it's a cycle, because you can keep repeating the process internally. That's what they call internal sales. That's what they call, growing companies and hiring, whether internally, externally, whatever. But whether it's internal or external hiring, because that's what we're talking about in this module, you have to prepare you got to prepare the actual listing itself. So I don't know if it's on that side of the screen or that side. If it's going to be on either side, I don't know. But preparing, obviously, you have to whether it's posted internally or externally, whether it's on their intranet or on the internet, like on Indeed or whatever the hell. A lot of people mess up in the skills and responsibilities and duties area. As far as that's concerned, there's not clear communication as to what you're doing, which means nobody in any department knows what they're doing, what they're responsible for. And so you can't own something that you're not responsible for. So it has the potential to become a big mess. Unfortunately. Which is part of the reason why all these cycles and all these roadmaps really, a lot of them are not clearly defined, and they have steps that are technically other departments' responsibilities within them, because the other departments are not aware that they have to do this. Really, there's just zero communication, so nobody can follow anything. And oftentimes mixed with the reality that nobody wants to follow anyone. So there's that element to it as well. Sometimes it's just a complete disaster. That's a lot of the companies, especially the companies that have been scaled massively, but they feel like they can just throw whatever fucking dollars they have towards their image and how they're portrayed, and that just takes care of everything. As far as the brand goes, as far as the public perception goes, as far as internally, the perception inside within the company once people are onboarded. But like Alex Hormozi always says, and he came to realize this when he started scaling his portfolio business of e-learning companies, is that money can only solve money problems, unfortunately. Go figure. Money can only solve money problems. Go figure, right? So, which brings me to sourcing, which is our bread and butter, second to all of our e-learning stuff. So everything that we're doing right here, what you are subscribing to, and what the companies that we help source candidates for take advantage of, what their employees take advantage of. This back and forth, which either these courses which you're watching, or the live streams that we do, the live Q&A and training, soft skill, hard skill tips, stuff like that, everything personal development, career development wise. So a sourcing step, the sourcing step is number 2 in the process. Normally I go backwards, but I think I'm gonna change it up and go 1 to 7 today. So I don't know, man. But yeah, sourcing, it's huge. People, I think, it's funny because people treat sourcers like sorcerers, and I'm crazy on the root word thing, as you know from the previous module, where I talked about objections and objectives. So, sourcing, I don't know. Like I said, people treat us like we're sorcerers or something. Like good ones, not the shitty ones. Like, I can't tell you how many meetings I've been on where I'm talking to a potential client and they're like, "There's no production whatsoever." It's probably because you're measuring the wrong thing and there's no defined anything. But that's another conversation. 3, screening and sourcing go hand in hand. So 2 and 3 go hand in hand. Sourcing, you just find candidates that apply once you've prepared your thing. Screening, you're looking through them all. 4, you're selecting them, right? So you take a look at all the candidates that you've sourced. Scroll up and down the page, whether it's Indeed, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Monster, Career Builder. That was kind of more like 10 years ago ish at the time of this recording. Career Builder, Monster, Jobs, and Snag a Job, and all that. So actually 2, 3, 4, they all pretty much go hand in hand. Screening, you're taking a look up and down. Selecting, obviously, you're just selecting the candidates that you feel like fit the role, whatever the hell. Which I could go in depth about the term fitting the role, fitting the culture, fitting whatever. I don't personally think you want somebody that fits. You want somebody that contributes and brings something that is not there instead of more of what is. Especially if what is not working, which is typically why you're hiring anyway, which is, once again, another conversation in and of itself that I just, whatever the heck. but I feel like, in terms of, like, we're going to go into the pitfalls, right? And what good sourcers, what good screeners, what good selectors can do to contribute. We're going to figure all that out in the modules that we'll record later this week. So why don't we just skip to number 5? This is what trips you up. You hiring managers, I am going to call you out on this one, because you've had a lot of people come through the door at one point or another, right? At one point or another, you sat across the table from someone, you didn't hire them, and now you're in a position where no one's coming through the door. Your sources might be shit, okay? Your sources might be shit. I'm gonna assume that your sources are not, hesitant to use the word capable, competent. Jordan Peterson always uses the word competent. The hierarchy of competence in the, he'll walk across stage and we'll talk about that frequently. You might be, your office might be suffering from major degrees of incompetence. I don't know. Hopefully you didn't hire them, right? Hopefully you weren't the one hiring the people that are sourcing or sitting on the computer day after day after day after day, and no one's coming through the office, even though they're a sourcer, whatever the hell. But assuming they are, assuming they aren't, you should totally go with us, because we can do that for you. Assuming they are sourcing in a way that is working for you, assuming that to be true, kind of falls on you, hiring managers. Just throwing that out there. But we can work on that. We can work on that. Sign your office up for, well, if you're watching this, your office might have already signed up for this, unless, of course, you're paying the subscription. Hopefully you're paying the subscription and getting access to the Q&As, the live Q&As and soft skill, hard skill training 3 days a week. It's a pretty great investment. But hiring and onboarding I'm just going to jump right into 6. I'm going to tackle 5 and 6 together. Hiring and onboarding are kind of one and the same. The onboarding process is where most people, that's the deal breaker, right? The onboarding process, number 6. Whether they just don't have a process, whether they do not adhere to the process, whether or not, I don't know what the situation is, particularly at your place of business, but a lot of the time, and this has been a theme through the past 20 minutes, and if I'm honest, the past 40 that you've watched so far, right, on this webinar, course, whatever we want to call it. It's not a webinar, course, whatever that. These diagrams that companies make, right, that they have the people cultivate, throw out to you, PowerPoints, and
PDFs and this, that, and the other thing. Whether it's a cycle, whether it's a roadmap, as the product people would be familiar with, they there's no set in stone. This is what we need to do. This is what this department should do across the board unanimously, even within industries. And so when people come from other industries or other companies, and they take a look at it, and the tasks, the responsibilities bleed into what other departments or what they felt like other departments should be doing, or what you know. And I really need to go through this actually real quick, because this is the reason why the diagrams fail. This is the reasons why companies are failing, and they just throw dollars to preserve their reputation, whether it's internally within the organization or externally somewhere else, whether it's like, free lunch for employees, whether it's, more ad dollars to promote whatever the hell with the brand, make it look good, fluff, foo-foo. Your cycle, whether it's sales cycle, recruiting cycle, the cycle of like duties, responsibilities within a department. Like I was Googling these diagrams earlier this morning, and I saw a cycle for specifically selecting candidates, which I might throw up here later in post-production, whatever the hell. But there are too many. First and foremost, you need to stop calling them cycles if they're not cycles and they're roadmaps. You need to start calling roadmaps cycles if they're cycles. Like what we call things, we need to stop focusing on what we call things and just start calling them what they actually are. Secondly, if you have tasks and responsibilities that bleed into other departments, you need to do them. 90% of the problem is people from other companies looking at a sales cycle or a recruiting cycle or a roadmap and seeing things that they deem other departments' responsibilities and not doing them, not taking responsibility for what's in the plan. And that's where things go to hell. Part of it, and I agree, part of it, if it's in something that typically a department does or is responsible for, that should be in that department's cycle or roadmap. That should be, right? So, a lot of the time it's not. It doesn't matter whether or not it is or not. If it's in your roadmap, if it's in your cycle, just do the damn thing. Just do it. And 90% of your problems internally will go away. I guarantee you. And I didn't really expect to get this heated and whatnot, but this isn't like scripted. If you can't tell, these aren't scripted. And so I just, whatever is important, as I bring these topics up, because I outline topics, and I just, whatever is important, I throw in there. So, hiring, onboarding, they're the same thing. They're two sides of the same coin.
5 and 6. And the last, number 7, the last one, is following up. Look, like I said in the previous 20 minutes, several times over the previous 20 minutes, and really the last 40 minutes of the course, the large majority of the following up, typically, in an ideal world, is done by product teams at the beginning of their cycle, roadmap, whatever they want to call it. Most of the time, it's linear. Most of the time, they're trying to establish an objective, which can only be done through research, which can only be done through talking to the customer that has already purchased and seeing what could be better. So a lot of the following up is done by product. A lot of the following up is done by customer success. Sales, you hear the phrase all the time, sales passes it off to customer success. But if it's in your cycle, in your company, I'm talking about your company specifically, just do the damn thing. Don't go, well, let me just pass it off to customer success. It's like, no, take responsibility for your part. That's what I have for you. Take responsibility for your part. If nothing else,